Haven't we been blessed by this gang? I tell you, what wonderful insights. How good it is to be in ministry and to be together in ministry together and to share with people who are innovative, people that are pioneers, that are willing to go out on the edge and to declare new things for the coming of the kingdom of God. And I'm grateful for all of you in your ministry. I'm looking for the PowerPoint. There we go. Good deal. This is where we go, now what? So everybody say, now what? Yeah, now what? This is an important thing because it's one thing to talk about innovation. It's one thing to talk about thinking about a new kind of future for the life of our congregations, but you're just one or two or maybe three people from a congregation. How are you going to move that ship that is so intent on going the same place it's always gone all the time? How can we help turn the corner for our congregations when we get back? One of the things that's really exciting to me is that those of us that are in church extension work are working together more closely in ways that we haven't before. So all the resources that we're going to be talking about here are all resources available to anybody regardless of what denomination you're a part of, whatever family that you're a part of. I think what's interesting is we have Presbyterians and Episcopalians here and Disciples of Christ here. We also have worked with the Missouri Synod Lutherans. We've worked with ELCA churches. We've worked all across the board. And all of us are facing many of the same issues of adaptive ministry for our congregations and the places where we're doing ministry. And, you know, even though we have different ways of doing stuff, like with the Episcopal Church, when I go to their conferences, I like saying, "The Lord be with you." See, they just do that all the time. It's funny. It's like pulling out a chain. And I really love that kind of stuff. But, you know, we all have, even though we have some different traditions, we're all basically the same. You know, when you talked about, when you just talked about the sacred kitchen that only 3 women could ever go into, you know, every church knows those 3 ladies. We've all been there. We've all been a part of that. So a lot of the dynamics that we're dealing with congregations, particularly in contextual analysis work and other kinds of things like that, are really basically some of the same things. So these are some of the services that we have available. One is called New Beginnings. New Beginnings has been around for a real long time. Not real long, about 6 or 7 years now. We've served more than 1,000 congregations in 5 denominations with this service right now. This has been a great program. I can tell you that the majority of congregations that go through this process, like 95%, will say that at the end of this process that they no longer think of their congregation as their context for ministry, but they think of their community as their context for ministry. That's a big, huge shift. The other part about this service that's helpful is 99.9% of the congregations that go through this process make an intentional decision about their future ministry and the direction that they're going to go. There's some just basic information. It would have been nice if I could read that from here. Maybe I can use the down. Yeah, right. It's a 4 to 6 month process. It's involved with leadership training for the congregation. There's house meetings that people do in their homes to follow up. But the biggest part of this is an assessment that's done by an outside assessor. That assessment is about 60 to 80 pages long, and it tells you things about your congregation that you might not have ever known, even though you've been a member of that church for a long, long time. 80% discover new ways to relate to their context. 18% chose dramatic redevelopment ideas like relocation or restarting congregations, doing something very, very dramatic. And like I said, only 2% of those congregations that go through this process actually get to the point and they say, you know what? We don't like our neighbors. We don't have any resources to work with. And we're not very good at being a church. What are we doing? And they close their congregations as a result of that. And that is a victory. That is a good thing when it happens at times. Another service that we have is an building evaluation service. It's a complete in-depth evaluation of facilities with your building team. A lot of times, congregations just kind of live with their building. They don't really take a very good, close look at it. Sometimes they have a lot of deferred maintenance issues. We heard how deferred maintenance issues that are unchecked for long periods of time can really drain a congregation. We don't really look at how we use our building. We don't really look at a lot of the different things. So we have a great service available for any congregation that wants to have a good in-depth look at their facility and to maybe make a decision about that in the future about the things that they need to prioritize. Another service that we have is one that we do in connection with the Episcopal Church Building Fund called Recasting of Assets. It's a coached and facilitated process for congregational teams that leads them through a faith-focused and result-oriented process to propel congregations into action. It's been my pleasure to go along with them on some of the stuff. We work, the New Beginnings assessment is actually the first part of this process, and the second part of the process is intentional hard work with small groups of people from teams of congregations that helps them regenerate their life as good leaders in the congregation, but also to work together to make concrete plans for the future of their church and the way that their congregation is going to develop. They look at new ways of using property, and it takes about 13 months to go through the whole process. And it's done in groups of congregations. And we're really looking forward to our next bunch starting to work together ecumenically. It takes 6 congregations to form a team to make this thing work in a community. So if there's 6 of you here from the same town, let's all talk after we get done. And the way that it works is there gets to be this enormous peer pressure between people. You know, they go to the first meeting and then they get a little homework, and then they come to the second one, and a church down the road did a lot better job with their homework than you did. So the next week you work a little bit harder and stuff like that. And it's fun to watch how all of that works together. And we've seen some amazing work come out of those congregations. And there's some pictures to show that as well. Another service that we have is called Mission Pathways, which is a self-run service. A lot of times you have a congregation where you've got really good, competent leaders that are fairly creative. They can do their own assessment of the resources that you have to do as a congregation, and they can look at your community statistics, and they can figure out ways for themselves to pull that together. And the power of using stories. We have a future story development process in this. It's a very creative process for congregations that have creative leadership that want to work together, and it's a self-run process. The way it works is you pay a small fee. You get access to our resource page with videos and other kinds of things. There's one video starring Rick Reisinger that's really powerful. And when you get done with the process, you give us a call. We send a facilitator that works with your church for one day, helps you develop your future story, and then there's 2 more modules where we work with you in implementing your future story. That's called Mission Pathways. Another service that we have is called Epiphany. And Epiphany is for a congregation that wants to do some really highly customized work. Say you've got a highly customized situation that you're trying to really think your way through as a congregation. But one of the issues is that your leadership is still stuck in 1950. And so this process works at trying to redevelop leadership, to reorient leadership about what it means to be a good leader in the Christian context. So it moves leaders from being transactional managers of a church towards being transformational leaders who are out to see what a difference a church can make. So a lot of times transactional leaders in a congregation, their first thought is, how do we get more people to come to our church, and how do we get more money? That's the only thing they want to think about. And if we play that game, it's always going to lead us to pretty much the same kind of conclusions. How can we fool people to come to our church? And so this process, though, reorients leadership to thinking missionally in their focus and to connecting with their communities in new and different ways, sort of like what we heard from our speakers here. It takes a little bit longer period of time. It's an 18-month customized process, and the cost is a little bit higher, but there's 2 retreats in particular that are involved in which we work specifically with the leaders of your congregation to help move them to a new way of being. Now, all of our church extension funds have a lot of other resources available for congregations. If you're a disciple, one of the things that you could do is come by our booth a little bit later on and talk to us, and we can maybe possibly set up a general consultation for your congregation. And that's a no-cost consultation to talk about maybe building issues that you have, to maybe talk about maybe some future ministry issues that you might want to talk about, other things like that. There's ways in which we might be able to work with you. For example, we're working with a congregation in Texas that needs to go through a decision-making process about whether they should stay in their building or not. We can help that congregation with that analysis so that they can get to that point. They're also going to raise a little bit of extra capital in order to pay for the 27 air conditioning units that are going out in their building. They've got 29, only 27 of them don't work. And so we're in conversation with them about raising a little bit of capital so that they could get those repairs done that they need to and fix those kinds of things. There's all kinds of ways that we could be helpful maybe for doing that. Also, I don't know if you know it or not, a lot of congregations really need to rethink their use of their sanctuaries. A lot of times our sanctuaries, I hate to say this, everybody thinks their sanctuary is so pretty and stuff like that. And when I go to some of these congregations, I got to say, some of them are not as pretty as people think. I've not seen aquamarine carpet for a long time until I go to some of the churches I've been. I did say that out loud. I did say that out loud. So one of the things that you might want to think about is sanctuaries can be renewed. And sometimes sanctuaries can be right-sized. So, you know, maybe your church is a third of the size it used to be, but you're still sitting in a 300-seat sanctuary, even though your worship attendance is about 80. And that's killing you. You know, there's ways that you could think through your worship space and maybe updating that and making it a little bit brighter. I've been in bars that have more light than some of our sanctuaries do. I got to tell you, you go into some of these sanctuaries, they're just dark, you know, from all the lack of light. So, gosh, I'm judgmental. The other thing I want to say is at times congregations will want to go through relocation. We can help a congregation get through the process of making a decision on that, but we can also work with you in terms of choosing the right area to go to. We've got really strong demographic data. In fact, it's almost scary how strong our demographic data is through our Mission Insight partners that we work with. So we can do what's known as a sociological extract of your congregation. We can tell what the sociology of your church is, and we can tell you what part of your community you're the best match for and help you find the best place to locate in terms of doing that. So there's just all kinds of ways in which we can help you.